ahead and turn it over to Renee.
Wonderful, wonderful, amazing. Thank you so much, Megan. And thank you all for being here and spending your morning talking about extended reality, because I mean, is there a better way to spend your morning, really? So other than maybe, doing it together. So that's great. Thank you. Like Megan said, we're going to be talking today about how we can make reality more accessible, and talking a little bit about some of my work, but also, and probably even more importantly, how you can start thinking about ways that you could make more environments, including the classroom learning environments, but in truth, any reality, because, challenges, especially learning challenges, they don't end when you walk outside of a classroom, right? So the thing that gets me so excited about extended reality is the potential for how you can use the technology and then some of the like components of that technology to make our world more accessible. So to get us started, in there, let me make sure my slides are working. This is a picture that it's one of my favorite pictures because it kind of like encapsulates what got me so excited about extended reality. I've been, working with extended reality and immersive and, motion design for many, many, many years, probably close to 20 at this point. But the kind of what got me into it was my background in interaction design. So, looking at UI, UX and user research and the way that people and humans interact with interfaces and computers. That's always just been something that's kind of driven my work. But I also have this love of motion design. And so I almost see extended reality as an advanced version of interaction design and motion design. So everything I kind of do comes through that like designer lens, but it's still a human lens. It's still the user that we're looking at. And it's a really, really important component of all things extended reality. So this picture I just love because it kind of culminates like where we're at right now, right? We're surrounded by rectangles, and a lot of them are glowing rectangles, right? So you see this person in the foreground in the bottom left who is not only working on a computer on a laptop, but also like FaceTiming someone on their phone at the same time. And it's like they have two different screens because they are trying to do so many different things and they have multiple windows open. And then you also have, you can see other people in the background. You can see their computers. You can see they're trying to eat and they have their phone right next to them. And you can almost see like three people that all have their smartphones within reach or being utilized. And the person walking by, talking, wearing a pair of glasses, just a little extra detail that's nice to point out. And then of course we have the windows, which add more rectangles. But the idea here is that we are surrounded by rectangles. And what I love about extended reality is how it gives us an opportunity to break out of all those rectangles. This is a fun little GIF trying to show you kind of like the evolution of augmented reality specifically. I am a huge component of all things XR, but my work focuses a lot on augmented reality and mixed reality, mostly because it allows us to enhance the world around us. So I will be talking about virtual reality as well, but a lot of what I do is in the mixed and augmented spaces. So we can see the world around us and then add that layer of information to enhance our reality. And so what I love about this is the potential that it allows us to look up and re-engage with the world around us. And so that we're not just so surrounded into these little glowing rectangles. And yes, there's so much information there. And obviously people like them, they engage with them constantly, so much so that they forget about the person standing next to them. So this is what kind of really just gets me super excited about it. And I know that we're kind of in that place where we're almost going towards that last gift there, but it's not there yet. And so we need to, now is the time where we have to really start making sure that everyone who's kind of working in this space is paying attention to how we can make it better, which will allow for more users to engage and adapt to this technology. So the exciting part, like I said, is our environment becomes the new interface. And that's the potential right there. It's like everything that, you see around you can now become something that you can interact with. And that's with that power comes great responsibility. So that's what we're going to get into throughout the next few minutes here. So I'm going to propose this question, and I want you to think about it. If you have a piece of paper near you, as I'm talking, I'd love for you to jot down some ideas. If you could add one piece of information into your everyday world that you could always have available, what would it be? And I don't want you to answer it right now, but I'm going to ask it again at the end. So I want you to have a piece of paper, and as you're thinking about it, as I show you some ideas and you're thinking about it, just jot some ideas down of what you think might be a good option. So designing for extended reality, also known as XR, we're designing for the senses, right? And just to make sure, I'm presuming everyone knows, but I always love to just make sure that extended reality is not a technology itself, right? It's that umbrella term that includes virtual reality, mixed reality, and augmented reality. So when I say XR, I'm kind of using that as like a all-inclusive term to kind of include all of those. But if there's a specific one, I'll make sure to call out, virtual versus augmented versus mixed. And even that line between mixed reality and augmented reality is starting to blur more and more as our technology gets smarter. So what we're really doing is we have the potential to use all of our senses when you're using this technology. And that's what makes it so exciting. So what my point will be here today is use that potential. You have all these options, and it's a matter of engaging them along the way. So the chat is open, and I would love for everyone to just take a moment and everyone just put in, what was your greatest fear as a child? It could be one word, it could be more than one, but I just want to know no judgment, people could be fearful of all sorts of things, but if you can go back, what is their greatest fear as a child? Thunder, sharks, yeah, spiders. Oh yeah, me too. The basement, yes. The wind. Growing up. Yep, the unknown, the dark, clowns. Perfect. Losing a loved one. Yes, and I'm sure that fear has not gone away, especially these days. Others, anyone else? Make sure everyone put it in your fear. I want you to think about it. Getting a vaccine. Yes. My kids still have that fear. Yes, dark. Perfect. Shadows, good one. Darkness. Yep, absolutely. Any others? Spiders, yes. And I still have that fear. Spiders is another one. Spiders is actually definitely a top of the list item for research they've done for childhood fears. Being lost, yep. Deep water. The fear of the unknown, a lot of these, yep. Perfect. Okay, so with that kind of in the back of your mind, think about the fear and what is it that actually makes you fearful of that? And a lot of those, so there's been a lot of research by this, trying to figure out, what it is about childhood fears and what are the greatest childhood fears. And you guys actually hit a number of them. So I'm not going to go through all of them, but the number one is monsters, according to the Bradley Hospital, which is in Providence, Rhode Island. And they work a lot with childhood anxieties. And so number one was monsters. And number two was the fear of the dark. And a lot of you have that, darkness, shadows, the basement. That's kind of what makes the basement scary, is it's dark and it's not, there's not a lot of light on and it smells different. So the point here is that what makes these things actual fearful is the fear of the unknown. But what really does that is it changes things. Like what makes you, if you go to the same place in a house, right, during the day and then at night, what's the difference? And the difference is there's not light, right? And so it changes our senses. It changes our perception of that space because we can't see it the same way. So just as if you were to walk around with your eyes closed, it has a similar idea to the fact that what you can't see, you don't know what's lurking around a corner because you can't see it, right? You don't know what a spider is going to do to you if it lands on you. So that becomes a fear. And so all of these fears are actually connected to our senses and our sensory understanding and the way our body perceives these. So If you lose one of those senses, especially if you're used to it. So if you're used to being able to see and all of a sudden you can't see because of darkness, someone covers your eyes, whatever the case may be, it breaks our equilibrium, right? And that is what causes the fear. So if you normally can see everything in your room and all of a sudden at night you cannot, that breaks the equilibrium, and that our body starts to like, wait a minute, this is not normal, and we become fearful. So the way to kind of overcome that is to make sure that you have that equilibrium of all your different senses. That's how reality is. That's realism. That's what we're used to when we're engaging in our physical, actual world. Okay. So when you turn a light off, that changes it. Equilibrium broken, we have that fear. There's obviously, I'm sure you're quite aware of all the different senses, but I want to talk about them specifically as it comes to engaging them in XR. So we have the visual, and that's the one that people probably pay the most attention to. You think about XR, it's like the visuals are probably the most exciting part, right? It's like you get to explore things that you may never have, in virtual reality. You get to change your viewpoint on things. All of those things are like super exciting. And that's what people usually spend the most time on. As a designer, you can imagine that's a focus of mine is, creating exciting visuals. And a lot of the visuals that I think I love about, especially augmented reality, is people are already using them. They're already engaging with them. So, if you watch the Super Bowl or any NFL game, watching seeing the 1st and 10 lines, they've been using those in broadcast NFL games since 1998. So, augmented reality isn't necessarily new. In fact, it isn't new. You can find examples dating back to the early 1900s. Of how, humans have created a visual and, added that layer of information into our view to allow and enhance the physical, surrounding. In this instance, you become a more active viewer in the football game, because now instead of just watching the players move up and down the field, you have a direct eyesight. Like we can actually see how far do they have to get to advance, to continue advancing towards their goal line. So this doesn't have to necessarily be high tech. In this instance, we're using motion sensors. We're using green screen technology. Super fun fact is that each stadium has their own green code, right? So if it's being broadcast at a specific stadium, the people who are running the broadcast know the exact green number so that they can use the green screen and plug that in. So that's just kind of fun that every stadium, you could be like, I know which color green that stadium is. But it's the concept, right? The visual enhances the overall experience for the viewer. A lot of cars these days have what's called a heads-up display. And the beauty of this is it allows you to have the information right where you need it. Right? So you have the display of the directions literally projected in a pretty low tech way. It's just a little projector, and it's actually reflecting right on the front, the front windshield of a car, but it's right where you need it. Right. And so just that thoughtfulness, instead of having to look down, which is, going away from, where you should be looking, we're increasing safety. It's really helpful for the user, and it's right where you need it. It's about focus. And as you can imagine, focus is a really important part of the way that people perceive information. If we're getting too many notifications, we're getting too many things calling us away, it's really hard to focus on our task at hand. So this is a really interesting idea of putting information right where you need it. So the visuals, I'm presuming, are the ones that make the most sense in terms of engaging our senses. The second one that probably people think of would be your auditory, so your sounds. And this is a part that's really exciting. Sound design is something that is a big part of our environment. Some of you, when you're talking about your fears, some of you said thunder, right? And so that's an engaging into one of your senses. And so when it becomes something that's not, it's loud or unexpected, and there's no anticipation of that, that can trigger, that sense of fear. It changes up our equilibrium. So auditory can be something that is used actually as an interface. So for those of you who've read some of Powered by Design, inside there's an example about talking about voice user interfaces. And voice user interfaces are a great way, you know, something that have proven themselves to be something that users want to engage with. Right, you know, our Alexas and our Siris and our, you know, these voice assistants who can help us get through, like, you know, communicate information, either receive information, but also a kind of a faster way to provide feedback. And, you know, giving them that human quality, because conversations are human, and it takes away that the kind of computer feel when you're engaging with a person versus you know, an artificial intelligent machine instead. So what I love about this example specifically is that the way that you can engage on an auditory level has options, right? So on each of the bottom screens there, this is an example of a chat bot. And so if you wanted to learn about, you know, something new, instead of just being reliant on one way to input, you know, giving your audience options to do so. One of the great ways that audio can be used within an XR experience is in a spatial way. So I want to play this. So I'm going to be quiet for just a moment. It's obviously not going to be perfect because this design was actually created to be experienced in person in a fully immersive experience. So if you have headphones in, that's probably the best. If you don't have your headphones in, you're still going to hear stereo because it's coming from possibly from your speakers. But if you do have headphones nearby, I would suggest putting those in real quick. Because this is going to be, this is an immersive audio experience. So there are speakers hidden throughout the woods in front of you. And as you see hand gestures being moved, they're actually engaging in a almost random level, but based off of the motion of the hands, it's activating different wildlife and nature sounds. So that's what this is called, Paradise. And I have to give credit to Doug Quinn and Lauren Covington. This is their installation. All right. So the idea here, though, is the immersive sound, and obviously being there is obviously the best possible option. But knowing that that's not possible, you know, the stereo version is what you just experienced, and they've actually adapted this immersive experience in many ways. So they had one that was outside, like you just saw in the woods, and you know, I had the opportunity to engage with it, and I happen to have two young children, and so they watching the joy on their faces that they could control the sound being out in, you know, nature, and hearing sounds that don't make sense for the location that you're in, just kind of add to this like magical feeling like you have this power, right? But they've also taken that same installation and then brought it indoors, and so they reimagined it for outside and then inside. And so obviously this, you know, the sound and the experience of having a fully immersive sound, you know, outside allows you to have this like ambient layer, right? The natural sounds that already exist. Like you have wind and you have, you know, other birds that are physically in that space. And so it becomes this like augmented audio experience. When they go inside, they don't have that same ambient noise, especially, I mean, they will, but it won't be, you know, reflective of nature and outside. So in this instance, they had to add a few more of those ambient sounds into these to this experience. So they have all of these different speakers all around the room, and they have all of it mapped out so that it makes sense for, location. So all the numbers 1 through 20, those are the different.
You want to watch? Okay.
Those are all the different speakers and all around the room. And as the people walk through the space, they get to engage with the sound and actually activate different sounds as well. So this idea is using what's called ambisonics, which is a 3-dimensional spherical audio format. So completely surrounding you, and using this like tetrahedral microphones to give you that spatial sound. And so there's many different kinds. This is just one ambisonic microphone. Sennheiser also makes a really great one. And the idea is capturing the reality, the realism, right, of a space, so that you can then utilize that in your XR experiences. So that when a user is actually experiencing something, they're engaging, they're getting that sense of sound, which is going to reduce their fear. And here's kind of what it looks like, this idea, this concept of spatial sound. The other one is touch. And touch in, XR experiences are going to be, that kind of haptic feedback that you may be more and more used to if you have, a watch or a wearable. And then obviously like your phones having some kind of feedback. And so the biggest thing for this, I would say, is just consistency, like having it very clear what's kind of like a negative reaction and a positive reaction. This is really important for VR because it's kind of like a feedback to know that what you did was successful, or maybe if you're going outside the bounds of the space that you allocated, you get some kind of touch feedback to let you know that you've gone too far. So if you're going to be in a full VR experience, that haptic is important, especially if you have something physically on your hands. But if you're using something like a mobile AR experience where you're using your phone, you kind of used to that. Like, if you touch something, you get a little bit of a vibration. And if you don't realize there's a haptic experience, that's okay. It's actually better, especially for a positive feedback. If you do notice it, then chances are that's kind of like a negative. Like, the more vibration that you get, the more impact, the more reaction you're going to get from the user. I actually have this like really negative reaction to the alarm vibration that I have on my watch, because that's what I use as an alarm in the morning. And so if I set my timer during the day and I get that same reaction, I'm like, no, because I connect it to, I have to wake up. I have to start my day, and I just really want to keep sleeping. So it's just those connections, that touch becomes an emotional connection because we feel it. Smell is another one, which is a little bit harder to do in extended reality, but it has been done. There actually is a lot of research to be creating what's called digital smell. And well, that's not 100% there yet. It is kind of interesting. There was a really great VR experience that you could actually get a sense of being a tree, right? What it feels like to be a tree. And the whole idea is about deforestation. And so it was a VR experience. And while people were interacting with it, the people who were running it, they actually lit a match and then blew it out. So there was actually, while you were there, you're experiencing, you could see fire, you could see trees burning, and then in the actual physical space, you could smell it. And even if that person didn't realize they were smelling an actual match because they were in their virtual environment, it just enhanced the entire experience. It just became so much more emotional because of that sensory connection. And then the last one, which is it's called our sixth sense, is proprioception. And you can't really talk about proprioception without also just letting you know what kinesthesia is as well. So proprioception is the perception of our body in space. And this is a really important one that's not really talked about enough in extended reality because it's reliant on this. And so it's based off of how our sensory system works. And it's the sense from within. Right. So all of the other ones are the ones we talk about, all the time. And they may be a little more obvious, but this one you're using whether you design for it or not. So the way that it works is if you were to close your eyes and take your finger and try to touch your nose. And if you can do that, then you're using both proprioception and kinesthesia. And so how that works in conjunction is your proprioception is the way that you can acknowledge where parts of your body are, even if you can't see them. And then the kinesthesia actually allows you to move it. So if you can pay attention to where, like if you can sense your feet, like say I know where my feet are, then you use the next step, which is to actually take a step or to run or to dance. And that is your kinesthesia. And so that's a sense that obviously is a really important part, especially as we are asking people to become fully immersed into these experiences. And like you can just test them constantly, thinking about if people can't see, how can they then engage in hand gestures or using other kinds of equipment? How can you ensure that? And that is all reliant on understanding of their proprioception and kinesthesia. If people don't have the ability to use or to sense where their hands are, then obviously that's going to be a limiting factor in the experience themselves. So if they can't use that, what other sense can you engage to help them still have a similar experience? Even if it's not exactly the same, it's still a similar experience to others who are using it. So we often associate our senses as separate, right? I just broke down all these different senses and kind of put them into their own groups. But what we talked about with the fear of the unknown, that fear of, the dark, is that when one of them becomes unavailable, right, or one of them's not being utilized the way we expect, that's where the breakdown happens. So it's not just that you engage one, it's how they work together. And they are highly connected and reliant on one another. Now, if someone doesn't have, isn't using one of those senses, say someone is hard of hearing or deaf, they're used to not hearing. So that would kind of be their standard equilibrium. If they were born that way, that's what they've known. So they have come up with their own ways to work with their lack of sound, right? But if someone is used to sound and all of a sudden isn't being engaged in the way that makes sense, that's going to break down their equilibrium. So offering an alternative allows opportunity. And that's something that I really want you to take away as you're trying to make your extended reality experiences more accessible and inclusive to a wider audience. So overcoming learning disabilities is a huge passion of mine. And it kind of has been a lifelong journey. So it all started when I was younger, and I started, being asked to take down my phone numbers for my mom. She had a small business that she ran from our home, and when she wasn't home, I would answer the phone, and I would take a message, and this is kind of what it looked like. And she would write down all these. I'd write down all these numbers, and I would say, "Okay, here, she'll call you back," and it would be a client. And she would call them back. She'd try all the numbers I would leave, and none of them were correct. In fact, the name probably also wasn't very correct either. Not a really great way to run a business. So my mom asked very politely, I should ask, can you please let the answering machine get the messages, because she could never call any of her clients back. And it was at that moment when we finally realized that, maybe there was an issue why I couldn't write down numbers correctly, and, couldn't write people's names or get the message correct. And that's when I was finally diagnosed with dyslexia. And so I actually have multiple learning disabilities, but I can't tell you what they all are, because after they told me, I just decided I wasn't going to let them define me. So I know for sure dyslexia, my mom to the day, so like, you have at least two more, but I don't know what they are. And I'm okay with that. Because I'm not a huge fan of the word disability, right? It allows you to say that you're not able to do something. And personally, I feel like that is a superpower, and it allows you to see it in a different way and engage in the world in a different way, which makes it unique. And so There are 10% of the population are affected by specific learning disabilities. So dyslexia is one of them. There's so many of them some of them don't even have names. But the idea is that people learn in different ways, and you kind of have to go under the assumption that the experience for one person is not going to be the same for another. And so you want to design for that. These are neurologically based processing challenges, and it has to do with our cognitive load and the way our brain processes information. And it may feel like a little bit of a garble. It doesn't make as much sense at times. But I personally love that this is a challenge. Doesn't mean it can't be overcome. And in the case of dyslexia, there's about 10% of the world population suffers from dyslexia. But the good news is, especially for that, is it has been proven that it's a self-compensating disorder. So people can, with time and effort and understanding and different kinds of treatments, you can overcome it. Not completely, it still happens all the time, but there are ways that a user can adapt to overcome, these specifically dyslexia. The way that I have done that throughout my life was I taught myself American Sign Language. And one thing that was really, really hard for me, spelling. And another one is remembering words that don't make sense. Learning different languages is a huge challenge. And so for me, I'm like, I somehow came up with this when I was probably in middle school, high school, that if I learned the alphabet in ASL, I could, as someone told me, if someone spells something to me, like HOUSE, right? They're trying to spell me house. That means nothing to me as individual letters. But if I spell it out in sign language, I can take those letters and I have a visual now that I can connect to the word, and I can put together the word house. So there's this connection kind of spurred this idea of, if I can take something that's auditory and connect it to a visual, it makes it easier to process. So I know that's not going to be the same for every person. Everyone has a uniqueness to them, right? But that kind of thought process spurred all these different ideas of, well, how can you take something that's only auditory and provide a visual to it? And that came to another challenge, which is introductions. So when someone comes up and says, "Hi, I'm Renée Stevens," we hear that auditory, right? But it's only one sense. And so how can we extend that? How can we provide a visual for something that only has an auditory? Or if someone says, shows me your name and it says Renée Stevens, how do I correctly pronounce that? And how do I create the correct auditory version of that? And part of this comes with that translation. That's the cognitive process that happens in our brain. And part of that happens with memory. And, memory is a huge part of, how our senses are engaged. I could probably tell you so many things about a person. I could tell you, maybe what color shirt they were wearing. I could tell you if they were drinking, a beverage. Maybe I could tell you the color of their mug. I can tell you what typeface someone chose for their logo, right? But I may not be able to remember their name. So all of these kind of things came together and helped create a concept for an application called Tag AR. And with Tag AR, the idea is to never forget a name again. But what it does is it takes your typical name tag and it makes it augmented. So as you walk towards someone, it identifies their name, identifies their face, and then the name tag literally shows up right where you need it in your view, right above their heads. So here's a simulation of it. It is currently available for mobile AR. The pure intent is that it'll be available for wearable glasses, AR glasses in the future. So it sees the person and it gives you your augmented name tag. And they're so happy because you got their name right. So as a professor myself, I meet so many students and I love my students and I want to engage with them, but after I haven't seen them in for a while, it's a really huge struggle for me to remember their name. And I know that's not just people who are dyslexic, it's people, it's humans in general. So the concept for this app isn't just to help those who are dyslexic, it's to help everyone, but it has that core underlying value. So it was inspired by those with dyslexia. So providing a visual to something that's normally just an auditory experience. So taking it one step further, oh yes, so my point here was it's a little socially awkward if you have to hold up your phone before you say hi to someone. So that's where the technology is working currently, but everything's ready and available. So once that we can employ that into, more of a mainstream technology for AR glasses, that this would be kind of the view. You'd be wearing a pair of glasses and just looking around the room and you could see the person's name. I choose this view specifically because it's not showing people's faces. And that was something that I really wanted to be important. Yes, it does use facial recognition, but it also uses location services in combination so that you can still have that connection even if you're in the back of the classroom. If you click on someone's name, you can then hear the correct pronunciation in ear, especially if you're wearing glasses with your augmented audio, kind of that idea that we saw with the audio. The name is almost, the audio becomes like a layer of information, right? And it's into your ear. And if right now how it works is from the speaker of your phone, right? There's still that social awkwardness. Hopefully, as we get more adaptation, it'll be kind of ready for that. So this was an experience that I concepted, created, wireframed, brought to life, and is now available currently only for the iPhone, mostly because technology right now is completely different computer program for Android versus iPhone. So because it's not where it needs to be yet for the technology, it's just for the iPhone right now, but it will be for Android as well in the future. And you may wonder how, obviously someone who is dyslexic, I want them to be able to use this app and have it help them, but it's not just limited to them. A lot of times when I'm talking with done a lot of research and talked to a lot of people with specific learning disabilities, a huge thing is they don't want people to know that they have a learning disability. So a lot of what I love about augmented reality is people can get services without everyone else knowing about it. And they don't have to ask for that. They don't have to go to a specific office and say, I need these accommodations. They can kind of take ownership of that and find things that work for them and then utilize them without publicly identifying with their challenge. So it's not, I don't want people to be like, oh, they're using Tag AR, they must be dyslexic. It's an app for everyone with the added bonus of helping those who have who are dyslexic. So that being said, of course, you want to choose a typeface that works. And so did a lot of research on that. Sans serif typefaces that are, Roman in weight, you don't want it too thick, you don't want it too thin, help increase the legibility. And so there's the tag, and the typeface used for this is called San Francisco, which is actually the default for the iPhone. So, which is great, means Apple is paying really great attention to accessibility needs as well. So I wanted to give you a really great recommendation for further reading if you are interested. And Kat Holmes, she wrote a book called Mismatch. And one of my favorite quotes is that to understand what inclusion looks like and what it means, you kind of have to look at the overall universal human experience, which is exclusion. So when you're creating something, you really, it's a lot of times people think, okay, what can I do to include more people in this experience? But if you flip that around and say, who am I excluding from this experience? It's actually much more powerful. So if you think about like a playground, for instance, if you're designing a playground, like if you're thinking about being on a playground, you think who's excluded from being where I am right now? And then thinking about how could they become more included after that? So here's that book, super great. Kat Holmes, she worked for Microsoft and helped create a great an inclusive design toolkit. And that's the URL if you do want to find out more. And the book is highly recommended, but the resource is also really great as well. And so what I want you to take from this is, yes, there are people with learning disabilities. There are people who may have different needs at different times. But what I really want you to think about is some of those are permanent, right? I'm going to like people who like, I'm going to have dyslexia my whole life, right? I can overcome it in different ways, but it's more of a permanent thing. But there are also temporary and situational changes that are going to allow even more people to be included by you making your experiences more accessible, by engaging more sensory inputs. You are actually opening it up to people who may just have a temporary need, or it could be situational. If there is, the sun is actually out today, which is incredible. If the sun is in your eyes, right, that's going to create a situational need. If you can't see, things are too bright, right? And so how can you accommodate that in your experience? If the only way to experience something is visual, then you're limiting it to those situational needs as well. So permanent, yes, that's the thing that people most may think about first, but there's also going to be those temporary needs. Someone has an ear infection, someone has a sore throat, those kinds of things, or situation. They may not have hands-free. They may, for whatever the reason may be in that moment, but maybe they normally do. So you're not only helping those small group of users, like I said, 10%, is specifically to dyslexia. You're not just helping those 10%. You're helping all those people who may not even know they're going to need that until they do. So how else you can incorporate this? This is kind of like my current to future project. It's in stages, but looking at how augmented reality can be used in the classroom. And part of that is reimagining closed captioning. So there's obviously, this is a multi-component project that I'm working on and doing a lot of research on. But the first component is reimagining closed captioning experiences for wearables, for smart glasses. And instead of having, the ability to, being in a classroom, if you are a student from who is hard of hearing, or someone who would like to have some kind of visual to combine with their auditory experience, you could benefit. If you are a student who is studying from another country, or you're in a country where the language that's being taught is not your native language, then you could get closed captioning support in the language of your choice. So kind of going through and exploring what closed captioning looks like and how we can improve that with augmented reality. So
the importance of working with a story is making sure that you have all three parts connected in one unit. En haciendo una película es bien importante que las tres partes que tengamos sean juntas para poder tener una unidad completa.
So a huge component of this project is trying to figure out what, a lot of user experience research and trying to identify what are the problems with closed captioning currently and how can that be improved with an augmented experience. So that's kind of my sneak peek into something I'm working on in the future here. But the concept there is customization, right? So putting the power in the hands of the users. All right, so how can you engage our senses to make sure that your XR experiences are inclusive and accessible? I just told you about all these different ways you can use the senses. So what can you do moving forward? The first one is provide options, right? Provide users the agency, right? The ability, kind of giving them the control to customize and personalize their own experiences. There's not a one size fits all, especially in AR. And the whole point is everyone gets to kind of has their own device. They get to kind of control their own reality. So why not give them the options? This could be really complex, or it could be really simple, thinking about just your light and dark mode options, right? You get to kind of choose what works best for you. So why not allow that for your users? A little goes a long way for options as well. User testing. Select people who will challenge your ability biases and become user testers for your XR experiences. You can say, oh, this is really helpful for these kind of people, but have you asked them? Have you observed them actually doing that? Can you see them actually physically having changes or, improving at some part of their life because of it? and find the people who you think will challenge what you expect. Like for me, I can't be the voice for every single person who's dyslexic because there's so many different kinds of dyslexia and it affects people in different ways. I can say here, hey, I've tried all these cool ways to overcome it, but somebody else has been fighting the same way and they haven't overcome it. So I have to spend time and listen to, people who may have completely different experiences than me, and absolutely you should. So observe is an important part, and talk with, interact with people who have a variety of different comfort levels. XR has so many different physical needs. It's important to look at people with different preferences, different abilities, different challenges, different heights. If someone has to do something sitting versus standing, that's going to make a big impact. Age, knowing how people, who are 7 will interact with something, it's going to be completely different than someone who's, 65. So have a variety of ages. Identities, socioeconomic backgrounds, experience using XR. Someone who has the first time they've ever put on a headset is going to have a different experience than someone who's been using it for a year. So make sure variety and diversify. Teams, work with diverse teams to create XR experiences. Everyone on that team is going to have a different experience and different perspective they can bring to the table. Having a designer who has a learning disability is going to have a different input than somebody who may never have even used XR before. They're going to have a fresh opinion, even if they may not bring as much experience like from the technical end. So different thoughts processes are important, and working with teams. And you can rely on, maybe you don't know how to create a spatial sound, experience, but have someone on your team who can, who focuses on audio. And then the last one is empathy. Try for yourself. The only way to do it is, the only way to really understand yourself is to try it yourself. You can watch someone, you can listen to them, but then you have to be willing to accept the fact that that you actually need to try it. So there's this wonderful book called The Black Book of Colors, and it's actually for children. But the idea is, how does a child who's blind, how do you explain color to them? And so this book it's intended for children, but I think people of all ages should experience it. And it's all in Braille. And all of the images are embossed so that you can feel the images on them. And so it just kind of gives you a sense of, and it's really great empathy building for children, but like I said, anyone, for those who don't have the ability to see, how can they experience color? And then of course, a challenge. So my challenge for you is sometime within the next week, play a game. It could be any game. It could be on your phone. If you have like a PlayStation or, some kind of game unit, you could do that. You could, of course, try out a virtual reality game, augmented reality game, whatever the case may be. Just pick a game and just play it how you normally would. And then I'm asking you to play it with only one hand and observe, pay attention. What is challenging? What changes? Play it, then, going back to how you would normally play, and then turn the sound off and see what it's like. Then play it with the sound on and have your eyes closed. And what is it like? And then after that experience, take notes. These notes aren't for anyone else. You can be completely honest, be like whatever it is, just, be real with yourself. But keep those notes and refer back to them whenever you're creating for XR or anything in life, really. Because remember, offering an alternative allows opportunity for someone who may need it permanently, someone who might need it temporarily, or just based off the situation. But having the alternative is what makes it more inclusive. So now I'm going back to my question and opening up questions for you all. But if you could add one piece of information into your everyday world, what could that be? What would that be? And you can always have it available. So anything, it could be closed captioning experience, a dictionary, a clock, a map, a voice assistant. What would be one piece of information that you would love to have always available in your world? And I'm happy to hear what those might be to get us started.
This is like different, but I guess like how my dog is doing at any given time.
Awesome. Yeah. So yeah, having an understanding of someone really important to you, right? Your dog. Absolutely. That's great. I love it.
I go on a lot of walks, so something that shows the different species of trees and plants that I come across would be really nice.
Awesome. Yep. Identifier. I agree. I spend a lot of time in the woods, and having some kind of identification. Yep. It enhances the world around you. Perfect. Right now, calorie count for any food I looked at. It's awesome. So use some machine learning in there, some artificial intelligence, and connecting all that together. Awesome. Anyone else?
For me, it'd be closed captions. I'm not hard of hearing or anything, but I just find a lot of times when I'm having a conversation, I'll be focused on something and I'll just kind of miss a couple words. So whenever I'm playing games and stuff, I always turn on closed captions and watching TV. I just find they're super helpful.
Yes, absolutely. I always have closed captioning on. In fact, when people like invite me to talks, they said, "Do you need any accommodation?" I'm like, "Yes, please include closed captioning." I am not hard of hearing, but I benefit from the closed captioning experience for sure. So I agree. And it's about focus too. So I didn't talk as much in this, but specifically, but those with attention deficit disorder or anything. Honestly, these days, anything that helps you focus is always a benefit. So whether you have a specific learning disability or, like I said, you're just human and you have a lot going on, having that closed captioning experience allows you that focus. Yeah, +1 to the closed captioning. Something to scan the terrain or elevation. Yeah, absolutely. There's actually a really amazing, there's actually a couple of them, but my favorite is the Peak Advisor app. And so I do love to hike. And so if you go for a hike, Peak Advisor, it's free. They have, added things you could do, but you can actually scan when you're on a mountaintop, or if you see mountains, it helps identify all of your mountains near you. And you could take a picture of it. So it actually adds labels to them all. That's a really great app. So it's not necessarily the specific terrain, but it does show the elevation of mountains. So you should definitely check that out. But I think that would be really helpful to know your terrain or elevation as you walk around the world.
There was one earlier in the comments for having the schedule information always, rather than having to look at a phone.
Yes, absolutely. Something that's like, I'm supposed to be somewhere at this point, or giving you that like 5 to 10 minute notice so that you don't miss it. Love it. The date of origin of any building or object I encounter. Very cool. I love that also. The history around us. VR and XR in general, I should say, has the ability to really kind of encapsulate history and memory. So if you go to a specific spot, right, every spot has a story. And so, XR could allow you to engage with the past, and it can also allow you to like look forward to the future. So history and XR work so wonderfully together. My camera for capturing and recording the environment. Always having a camera. The best camera is the one you have with you. So anything you can do to capture that for sure. And there are some glasses, spectacles too, just came out from Snap, and they actually do have camera built in. So you could start capturing the world around you with those glasses called spectacles too. Notepad for tasks, new ideas. Yes, I need that like built into my brain. So like as I think, it just kind of writes it down for me. Absolutely, notepads are fantastic. Countdown to every upcoming event in my life. Absolutely, and I need that as well. AR, display the call number of a book you're looking for, your glasses, phone, screen, floating. Yes. The ability to just tap on a call number, also very helpful, so you don't have to retype it. And when Apple started transcribing all their voice memo, like when you have a voice call, a message, I guess is what it's called, it now transcribes it. That feature is like amazing. And it actually writes out the number for you. All you have to do is tap it. Like that's been a lifesaver for me. Automatic scheduling monitor. Yep. Just a search box. So many questions all the time. Yes. So again, with the search box, it's opening it up. It's putting the control in the user's hands, right? That's called agency. And having the ability for people to give them something that will help them find it is key, because then you can't design for everyone. You don't know what every single person wants. There's no way. So instead of trying to find like the one size fits all, allow for options for them to find what they need. Awesome. I'm sure there's other questions, so I'm happy to take those as well. You have some great ideas. Look at, you all just created all these AR experiences or XR experiences that you can create to make the world a better place and a little bit more accessible to those around us. So thank you so much. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, I've got a couple questions. So first of all, you were talking about sort of how can we design to accommodate for senses that people might have a deficit of? And I was wondering if you knew anything about whether bone conduction had been used to accommodate for deaf people's lack of perception of sound in order to give them some sort of an auditory experience.
Yes, there is research being done. So the cochlea is inside of our ear, right? And the cochlea sends so the way we perceive sound, right? It's a vibration that goes into our ear, and then the cochlea helps send that information to be translated to the brain, right? Via our nerve system. So they are doing research on that, and there is stuff that's being done. And obviously like a cochlear implant is an example of how they have created a way for that, but it's not made, it doesn't work for every person. So it's kind of depending on how much they can hear. You know, if they're hard of hearing, that might be more productive, or might be something that can be useful to someone versus being completely deaf. So I think it depends on how much hearing they actually have, because saying someone is deaf is not, there's so many different ranges of sound abilities. So, and that changes over time. So there is research being done, and there is, I don't know if it goes specifically into the bone necessarily, but definitely into how it impacts the cochlea inside of our ear. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
And secondly, do you think that the role of sort of augmented reality, be it virtual reality or extended reality, is to sort of make reality as it is more accessible or accommodating? Or do you think it's sort of, we're heading in a direction of changing reality or trying to elevate it from what it already is? And sort of, what do you think the role of this technology is and should be?
Personally, I think the role that it is to kind of help create experiences that are different, I guess, or magical. But what I hope that they become is creating ways to make the world around us better, like find problems in our everyday life. You guys just all listed a bunch, and how you can utilize this technology to make our experiences better, make our lives easier, even in our daily tasks. And so I see that part of being the role, kind of like the responsibility of everyone in the XR field. No pressure, but to take what is available and utilize it to its fullest potential to help people, and not just one person, not just yourself, but other people, the people who are around you, who see the world differently and have different needs than you. So the way I see it is kind of like, yes, there's all this potential, and now is the time to tap into it.
Thank you, Renee.
Yeah, thank you, Alexander. Other questions?
Maybe two quick questions. First, you brought up dyslexia, and you also mentioned multisensory learning, which is something I worked on just a bit in the past, not in a VR context. So I was wondering if you are involved in any work that tries to leverage multisensory learning to improve learning processes of dyslexics using AR or VR. That's the first one.
Yes. You know, I kind of, my augmented learning, that's mostly user research based. So I am doing that. I kind of do more like hands-on, like I design the thing and then, you know, kind of see how people react to it. But there is, and so part of what I talked about with working with teams, right? It's really important to find people who are doing stuff that is equally engaging. So I've been working with different professors and researchers who work specifically within education space, and how using technology can help improve the way that we learn and the different ways that we learn. But there also is some amazing research happening. I think it's out of Colgate, and I'm trying to remember the actual school, but they are specifically doing a ton of really valuable research that utilizes how multi-sensory learning can actually improve the way we learn. So I would definitely encourage you to check that out. And I'm sure I'm as soon as I hang up this call, I'll be like, remember the exact name of the research institute, but I believe it's at Colgate. And yeah, I think personally, there's only so much one person can do. So I think it's important to tap into all the things that other people are using. And I find it so incredibly inspiring to see how people are just learning about how multiple senses can can enhance the way we learn. But then I'm happy to be the person kind of like, let's try that in XR. So kind of taking something that wasn't intended to help in XR and finding that kind of like, oh, look at that. Look at how this, research improved the way that these people in the space learned. And then, saying, okay, let's see how this works in XR. And so kind of being that bridge between people who are doing the research and don't know how to get it into the XR space. So I'm not sure if I 100% answered that, but hopefully.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
the second
great.
question, but I'll wait. Maybe I'll just have questions.
Yeah. Okay, great. And I would love to see what you've been doing with multisensory learning. Feel free to reach out and love to learn more. There was a question in the chat, which was, a lot of this depends on AR glasses, but there isn't a clear industry standard yet. So obviously there's, a cost issue, right? And so we're still in the early adoption stage. So where price and availability hinders widespread use and further, our socioeconomic digital divide. What needs to happen before your great design ideas can reach the masses? I say tap into what's available now. So for Tag AR, I was like, I don't know if it's worth making this until I can see it to its full potential. But I would say don't wait, because the best way to do something is to start doing it. So instead of waiting for something to come, it's about adaptability. So every piece of technology that's out there, if you're even just looking specifically at Apple, if you have an Apple Watch, right? An Apple Watch is an important step in the right direction. So it's a wearable, and the thing about glasses is like, it's so personable. You're literally wearing them on your face. You have to have so much trust in them, which again goes next to the thing of fear. You don't want to someone be fearful of something, right? You have to instill trust. And if engaging all those senses, creating it to make it real is going to help reduce those fears. So the Apple Watch, the technology in the Apple Watch, it's kind of like the future, right? It's like it has to connect to a smartphone. So these AR glasses, there's a couple issues. One, processing power, battery life, and heat, right? So you can't have a big computer on your face. It's just not going to work. So they're using all of that. They're offsetting all that processing power to the phone, just like your Apple Watch. Right? The Apple AirPods, right? They go into your ears and they can sense when you take them out, they can sense sound around you. All of that technology already exists. So they're doing all of these things, and you can test all of your ideas based off of that. It may not be the perfect AR glasses, but the technology is already there. They're not going to just brand new technology in an AR glass. Like, all these little things are really important. If you have an iPhone 12 or up, on the iPhone, there's this little black dot. If you can see on your phone, if you have that, that's your LiDAR scanner. And if you have that, you can test it. It basically allows you to create a spatial mapping of an object or a room, right? And you can use something like photogrammetry. And so all of that technology, Apple is pretty smart. They test it all in other places before they bring it in. So I'd say don't wait. Engage with that technology in its current form, so that when it does happen, it's kind of ready to go. And then you can accommodate and adapt. The cost issue, yes, that's going to be something. But when the Apple Watch came out, everyone was like, "What? That's who's going to pay that much for a watch? And then as the technology improves, you know, the cost will go down. There's still obviously going to be a socioeconomic consideration there. And that's where I think, like, you know, working and trying to get like grants to get these in the classrooms, in that, you know, on the faces of kids who need them the most, is something that I'm, you know, 100% for, you know, trying to figure out how to, you know, kind of create these programs. But it's definitely a real issue that I don't have all the answers to, but I just know that I would say, don't let the fact that it's not here yet stop you from creating something now, that could help in the future, because every little step is a stepping stone towards the right direction. And Apple Glass, whatever they call that, it sounds like VR is going to be coming first, is their latest. So that might be interesting to see how that works and what that rollout is before the actual AR version. Other questions?
So I have a question that's twofold. By removing anxiety from the VR experience, could we actually be introducing anxiety about the real world? Like, for instance, something that might bother me is how much time is passing. Where am I in the room now that I can't see anything? So how do we tie the user to reality and still give them a meaningful experience?
Yeah, I feel like you just answered your own question. That's awesome. You're like, is it possible that, yes, that could also be too much, right? And I feel like the answer is yes. You just showed me that. So yes, and that's where I would say the customization and the personalization features, and allowing the user to control what, you know, at least parts of, you know, what's available to them is so important, because like I said, you can't design for everyone. Some people, yeah, like I love looking at like calm technology. So technology that's not constantly providing notifications, or something that is going to reduce the like cognitive overload, like having it there, but not having there be like an action or emotion to it is really important. So sometimes having the option for it to be there, having a way to turn it on and off is important. And adjusting the amount of it too. Like if it's a sound thing, you know, obviously you need a volume control or something like that, because if not, everyone's volume level is going to be the same. So I feel like you kind of answered it yourself, but I'm 100% in agreement. And I'm so appreciative that you brought it up, because I do think it is important. How there is like, can you go on a sensory overload? Absolutely. You absolutely can. So having an opportunity to have it there for those who would like it when they would like it. But also just knowing yourself, like there's times where I may not want to, I might want closed captioning, but there's times where if I'm like, just can't even process what's happening, I may not want to see that at all. So having customization options definitely is a benefit for accessibility and inclusion, but also for like just mood and influences of your everyday. And I also do a lot of research and work with people, those with sensory processing disorders. And, you know, that changes. Sometimes they want more sensory input and sometimes they want less, and that can change dramatically in a short amount of time. So yeah, having the ability to control it is an essential.
We are coming up on time. We've got a few minutes left. Maybe you can take one more question.
Sure. I see one in the chat. I know the introduction of laptops for every student into public school.
Sorry, that's not a question. That was like a response to something that you asked earlier. Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yes. And
Maybe
yes,
I'll ask
I agree.
my second question then, unless anybody else is. So you mentioned this equilibrium that we have that are established by our existing senses. So I'm wondering if people are looking into how concepts like extended reality, new technologies, they're not creating necessarily new sensing modalities, but they're extending the types of information that we are receiving, whether that changes that equilibrium and what that would mean.
Can you say that last part one more time? I just want to make sure.
So basically, I'm just interested in understanding. So when we have this technology, extended reality, where we may have access to types of information, it may be even coming from parts of the electromagnetic spectrum that we are not sensing with our existing senses. I'm just wondering if anyone is studying how that changes that equilibrium that humans have and what the implications would be.
Yes, I don't know specifically of someone studying exactly that, but I'm sure there's things around that topic. So I guess I don't know. Yeah, I can't direct you to a specific, but I would say that yes, that equilibrium, just like any other equilibrium, it has to be adaptive. So having, like, I guess kind of going back to that same kind of concept of agency is allowing the user the control to kind of make that adaptation. But sometimes people don't know what they need until they experience it. So there's other technologies in there that are kind of adjusting, like sound automatically adjusting to the environment, and light adjusting, based off of the available light in a space. So I feel like it's kind of a combination of allowing the user to have some control, but also having the technology, using the smartness of our technology to kind of change and adapt our experience based off of our real world.
Okay.
Did that help answer? Hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, we have like less than a minute left, but so I just want to wrap up very quickly, and thank you so much, Renee, for joining us. We're very grateful to have learned more about your work and your research, and you talked a lot about a lot of important points that I think that we need to think about and consider in our own work, and you shared so many great examples and strategies and for steps forward. Thank you also to everyone who attended today. If you would like to continue to follow Renee's work, please check out her website. That link will be coming in the chat. And then this is just the beginning of this series. We have, I think, 8 other speakers that are coming up throughout March and into April. So, and they will be posted to the StudioX website as well as the university calendar. So with that, thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Feel free to reach out with anything you need.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you.